Okay. Well, welcome to this online meetup. This is getting started with Okta Workflows, building your first automation. My name is Max, and I sort of do education and community for Okta Workflows. And this is our monthly um, online meetup that we host. Specifically today, again, it's an introduction to Okta Workflows, and we're going to cover the building blocks, and then we're going to build a flow. And the flow we're going to build is going to notify someone in Slack when a new user is added to a group. And then, so we're going to, as we build the flow, I'm going to cover the fundamentals, and then we're also going to test the flow. Also, this event is recorded, and then we'll post the recording on the Okta YouTube channel likely tomorrow. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Now, I know we switched platforms. If you attended previous events, we used Crowdcast, and now we switched to Zoom. So, but yeah, so it's a new platform for me a little bit. So just wanted to let you know. But let's go ahead and get started. This is the only slide that I have, and then we'll go into workflows. So let me go here. All right. Let me see if there are any questions. All right, I don't see questions, so that's good. Okay. At the core, Okta Workflows is a no-code identity platform that allows you to automate identity processes, right? Now, at its core, and let me open this flow here. At its core, they're connectors. And these are connectors to various services out there, of course, including Okta as well, that you can connect to. So this is the core of the platform. And then you call these services, and you can build automations using these various services. So let me go back. And I'm actually going to create a new flow here, as I said. But also, before I do that, maybe I'll start with this. Let me give you a quick introduction here, if this is your very first time. So this is the homepage, and here at the very top, you have some videos. On the right-hand side, we've got some resources, documentation, how-to guides, videos, training, the community resources, office hours, and online meetups. If you scroll a little bit down here, there's some use cases, popular use cases that you can review and you can try. Flows, this is where we're going to go. Connections, so these are connections to the various connectors that I mentioned. And then templates, again, also we have a lot of pre-built templates that you can add to your sort of console or dashboard, and then try and see how a particular solution works. Right. So this is kind of the overview of the homepage. But let me go here. So also on the left-hand side, I have a lot of, as you can see, I have a lot of folders, so you can organize your flows into folders. Again, if you're starting, you're not going to, of course, there's only a default folder, but as you can see, I have a lot of folders here. So I'm going to go to online meetups and then open right here in November, and I'm going to create a new flow. So to create a new flow, you click this new flow button, and right there you get a new flow. Now I'm going to give it a name. So notify create group, and it's usually a good idea to give it a description. And then I'm going to give it a description. Now I'm going to check this option because this will allow me to see the executions as I run the flow. You're going to save the data for each execution. So this is very useful and helpful. And I'll show you how it works. But what I did is I created a new flow and I gave it a name. Now, usually the first thing you're gonna think about is, how do you trigger a flow? So there are different ways you can trigger a flow. And then it says here when this happens, and you click Add Event. And there are several sort of most common ways you would trigger a flow. So the first one is a schedule, is when you run the flow on a schedule. So maybe every hour, every day, and every week. Helper flow is when one flow calls another flow. So just so you're aware what it is. If you go to our YouTube channel, we have a lot of videos with that show how to use helper flow. API endpoint is you can trigger a flow via an API endpoint. So another system can call an API point, which will in turn trigger a flow. And then a delegated flow is you can give someone who is a non-admin in your Okta dashboard, and they can call this, they can invoke the flow, right? They can run the flow. So again, someone who is a non-super admin can call a flow. But now there is another way, which is using an event, right? So these are the 4 different ways to trigger a flow. But another one is, and that's going back to the connectors, these various connectors support different events. And so when an event happens in those systems, you can trigger a flow. So for example, looking at Okta, so these are the various events that you can use to trigger a flow, right? And if I select a different connector, so maybe I select Gmail, so these are the events which you can use to trigger a flow. Okay, so as I said, the connectors are kind of the core of the platform. But I'm going to use Okta, and I'm going to find an event. So there's a long list of events, but you can also search. So, and then it's new user. Let me see group. Let's see here. So right here, it's not letting me scroll back more. Anyhow, but so I just added this event, and I'm just going to quickly show it again. I'm going to delete it, add event. And I'm going to select one of the connectors, and that's Okta, and I search for group. And it's not letting me for some reason. Okay, but anyhow, it's right here, user added to a group, and I select it. Okay. Now, one thing, and I don't have time to show it here, but for every connector before you can use it is that you need to create a connection, right? So you have one connector, and then you can have multiple connections. So you can have a connection to your testing environment, you can have a connection to your development environment, or a production environment. Okay. And so this is my connection information. So I use an existing one. Now, all these fields, this is what the event makes available. So when this event happens, it will trigger a flow, and then all the data here you can see will be available to me. So there's the admin information, there's the Okta user information, and then there's the group information. Okay. So what I usually do is before I continue building the flow, what I do is I'm going to save, and I like to try and trigger this flow and see how it works, just to make sure that I get the information. Okay. Now, what you need to do, so I saved, and then in the upper right corner, there is a button. I'm going to turn the flow on. Okay. Also, right here, it says save all the data that passes through the flow, right? It's the same option that you saw here. It's the same option. Okay. So the flow is on, and this is the designer. And now I'm going to switch to execution history. So this is where I can see when the flow runs. And because I'm saving the data, I can look at each execution and see the data and how it passed from sort of step to step. Okay. Of course, nothing is here yet because I need to run it for the first time. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go to my Okta dashboard, and I'm going to open it here. And let me sign in. So I signed in. I'm going to go to the directory. I'm going to go to groups, and I'm going to select this no code automation group. And I'm going to say, well, there's Peter is already signed, but we can remove Peter. And then click assign, and then we get all the people. Why don't we assign Peter back? So I'm going to take Peter Keeney, and I'm going to click this plus sign, and I'm going to assign Peter to the group. So I'm going to click, right? And now I'm going to go back to here. And sometimes you need to just refresh this, or sometimes go to the designer and go back to execution history. And right here, you can see success, right? And as you can see, now this is all the information that the event makes available. It's now in this particular execution. So you can look at the admin information. That's the person who edited the user. You can see the user, the Okta user information. And if you see those two arrows, if I click on the arrows, it expands and shows me the JSON information. So we can see Peter and the information that's available about Peter. And then the group itself, we can look at the group, and then there's the group ID, and there's the name, right? So what this means is that, hey, this event works. When I add a user to a group, the event happens, and then it triggers the flow, right? So that's what I like to do. Again, before building the entire flow, I like to just test this. Okay. So let's continue building this. So again, so what I did here, this is a card. This is in Okta Workflows, this is called a card. And this is the event card. And I'm going to continue building the flow. Now, my goal is to send a message to Slack. So next is I want to create a message. And let's review what we have here. So if I click App Action, we're going to see the connectors again. So you can add these connectors, and then you can call various actions on the connectors, right? So that's how you interact with all these services, right? I'm going to do that with Slack, but I also wanted to, manipulate data. I want to create messages. I want to work with objects. I want to work with lists. And so that's called a function. So I'm going to click Add Function, and you can see all the categories. There's logic, there's manipulation, text, number, true, false, date and time. So these are all the functions that you can call to manipulate data. The one I need is compose. It's in the most popular category. It's also in text. So if I select text, you can see all the various functions that I can call. And the one I need is compose. So it says enter freeform text. This is how it looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say new user, or we can just say this, user added to a group, user added to a group. And what I want to do next is I want to just format this message a little bit. And you can use Markdown. So when you send a message to Slack, you can use Markdown here. And so what I'm going to do, also just to make it a little more fancy, I'm going to add an emoji here. And I'm going to do like this. And then here, I'm going to say the group name. And then I'm going to use Markdown. Right? And this is the group name. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to scroll down, and I want to insert the group name. So I'm going to scroll down in the event. I can see, okay, so it makes available, display name is what I need. So I'm going to take a field, this field, and I'm going to connect it like this, right? So that's how you pass data from card to card. Now for the next one, I'm going to say user. And then I'm going to scroll down here, scroll up, and I'm going to say display name. All right. And so do it like this. Okay. Now, if I wanted to, you could test and just enter group name, maybe no code, and then enter max. This is how it's going to look. Of course, it's going to format. We're going to see the formatting once we add Slack. Okay, so we're going to come back to this, but for now, we created the message, and then we connected data from the previous card. Okay. Let me quickly see if there are any questions. All right, no questions. Okay. And then so next, what I want to do is I want to send a message to Slack, and because Slack is a service, another service, I'm going to use an app action. I'm going to click action, and then I can also search for Slack, and this is a connector to Slack. Now, again, if you didn't have a connection, it would prompt you to create a connection. I already have a connection, so I'm going to reuse it. But these are the actions that the Slack connector supports. And I'm going to scroll down, and the one I need is send message to channel. Right? Now, this particular connector, it's asking me, okay, so which channel, right? So it's already connected to my Slack instance, and then these are the channels that I have. So I'm going to workflows test, right? And then send as a both no, and then there's some other options, and every connector is going to be different, and I'm going to do plain text. Now on the next screen, and again, this is every connector is going to be a little bit different. It's showing me the inputs, and there's one input that's optional, so the thread timestamp. So I'm just going to uncheck it. I don't need it. And then same, the output, we can keep the output. This is just a timestamp, and I'm going to click OK. So we can see text here. Now, so before I run this, you can test individual cards, and this is, again, I highly recommend you do that, is that you click the Run This Card button, and we can say hello from Workflows, and I'm going to click Run, right? And then this is just a timestamp, and I'm going to click Close. And again, before I show you the Slack, again, I have a connection right here, right? And so if you were to create a connection, let me show you how it looks. I don't know if Zoom is going to show you, but you can give it a name, test one, and then click create. But I don't know if Zoom's showing you, but it's going to prompt you. You're going to see a dialog similar to like when you connect with like Google. It's going to say, hey, can Workflows access this account? And then the permissions. And then you say authorize, and that's how it creates a connection. Right? So that's how you do with Slack. Other connectors are different. You might need to enter an API key of some sort, right? But that's how you create a connection. So I'm going to cancel out, and I'm going to use this one. It's actually asking me again. So let me do this. All right, but let me go to Slack, and so this is the message that I just sent. Hello from Workflows, and I know since I changed the, I can do this again. Hello again. Right, and I can go to Slack, and this is the message. So this means that my connection works, and I can send a message to Slack. All right, so let's go back. So what I need to do now is I need to take this message, and I need to pass it to Slack. So I'm going to take this output and connect it like this. Now, every time you create use a compose card, the default name of its output is output, and that's fine. But once you have more cards on your flow, you sometimes want to give rename these outputs just to give it more sort of context. And so let's rename this. And then right here, this is the type of the field. It's text, and then you can customize, and you can say the Slack message, and then you click save. and then it changes here as well. So if you come back to this or someone else returns to this flow, okay, so this is a Slack message. Right? Now, when the cards are next to each other, it's kind of okay, makes more straightforward to understand, but sometimes this card can be farther in the flow. And so again, this just adds a lot, it's straightforward to rename and adds a lot of additional information. Okay. All right. Okay, well, we can now save this, right? And let's run this and see how this works. So I'm gonna go back to the dashboard, which is right here. And why don't we just remove Peter and then assign again, and then go here, switch to execution history. And sometimes you need to, if you wait a few seconds, and right here we can see a second run. And you can see again, we have this information coming from the event. Now we're having the compose card, and you can see this information, the message, and then sending to Slack, right? And if I go back, look in Slack, right, we can see that we notified that user added to a group, and we can see group, and then the user. And you can see the markdown is now, we can see how it's formatted here. Okay. So this is good, but now we also want to, in addition to the display name here, we also want to show maybe the email. And I'm going to look here. Well, I'm going to go to history again. And I'm going to look here, Okta user. I'm going to expand this. And okay, so the email is here. This is the alternate ID. But let's say you want to add even more information that's not available here, right? So you only have really three things available here: the ID, the alternate ID, and the display name, okay? But maybe there is a situation where you need more information. So how do we do that? Okay, so let's see if we need to get more information about this user. So there's a card in Okta, on the Okta connector that reads the user information. And so I'm going to click the plus here, and this first one is for connectors. This one is for functions. And then this one is to add a note. Oh, I added two of them. So let's say read user information. So you can add a comment or a note and then say following card reads additional user information. All right. So again, I advise you use this to give more context and more information about this flow. Okay, but let's add the actual functionality. So I'm going to click this plus, and I'm going to go to my connectors. And again, I'm going to go to Okta, and I'm going to search. You can of course scroll, but the one I need is called read user. Now, and it's showing me, it has all these properties that it can display, but I don't need them on the output. So I'm actually going to uncheck them. Now the input is required. It's the user ID, but I don't need all these outputs. And what I do need is, well, let's say username and maybe the primary email. And I'm going to click save, right? And that's how it looks. Now, if you ever need to come back, it's like, oh, I need another field here. So you click the gear, and then you select choose fields. And then you can see this view again. So you can select which fields you want to show. Okay. Now, as we tested the Slack card, we can also test this card. So I'm going to go to execution history. And I need the user ID. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going in the Okta user. I'm going to expand. And I'm going to copy the ID, go back, and then I'm going to test this card. So I'm going to click this button. I'm going to paste the ID, click run, right? And that works. Now, let's say I made a mistake and I'm just going to enter something incorrectly. I click run, and then I get a message, right? Okay, so this tells me that this ID is incorrect, right? So I need to go and figure out why. But again, this is why it's handy to test the cards individually. Okay, so we got the ID, so we're gonna take the ID from the user. Also, just be careful is that it's sometimes okay, well, not straightforward, but it's like, oh, I have the ID, right? But that's the wrong, that's the admin, right? That's not the user. So just kind of be aware of that. So you want to take this user, the ID, and connect it like this. Okay. And now, since we have their email, what we're going to do is we're going to add, let's say, parentheses. I'm going to take the primary email and drop it like this. Oh, I missed the parentheses, so let's do this. All right. So now, we have the user information, and let's run this again. So I'm going to go to history, and I'm going to go to my dashboard. No, why don't we get someone else? Kate now. Let's add Kate, and well, we can go to Slack. And right here, we can see that we added Kate, and then Kate's email. And to see the history, think again, sometimes you need to go back to the designer and switch to, and then this is the third run. Again, the event information, and now we have this Okta with user card, right? We're retrieving additional information about the user, and then the compose, and then the Slack. So, all right, well, that's all I wanted to show you, but let me just look at my notes here and just make sure I covered everything. Again, the goal was to cover the fundamentals. Of course, there's a lot more that you can view with the platform. And again, we have a lot of videos on the YouTube channel. And what I'm going to do, you'll receive a message after this event, and I'm going to include a link to that YouTube channel so you know where to find it. But let's just review quickly what we covered, and again, the fundamentals. So, first is how do you trigger a flow, right? And we talked about several ways. In this particular example, we use an event. Okay. You can also run a flow and schedule. You can also API endpoint, right? So from another system, helper flow, and then a delegated flow. So those are the options for triggering running a flow. Now, also another option is actually just clicking run here, right? That's another way, right? It's a manual way, but you're running the flow. So if you have a flow that maybe you run very infrequently and you don't want to schedule it, I mean, you could just go open it and click run. I mean, that's another option. But that's how you run a flow. Okay. And then we have different cards. So I said, so this is a card, this is a card, and this is a card. And there are two types of cards. We've got action cards, and these are cards for various connectors. I'm going to open this again. All right, so these are connectors, and then you would create a connection for each connector, right? So, and then we've got function cards, and that's where you can manipulate data, logic, and so on. And then you can put a note as well. Just looking at my notes here. And then I also show you how you can test individual cards, and then also how you can test the flow. And then, this is as you're building the flow, you'll be switching to this view all the time just to see how the data flows from card to card. Okay. A few other capabilities. If you have a lot of executions, you can search, right? So it will search this information right here. So maybe if I enter Kate, we can see that it found this Kate, right? I have 3 executions, but Kate only one of them, so you can see. So this is very handy as well. Also, what I use all the time is, if you're not certain how a particular card works, is that next to the play or run this card icon, there is also a question mark, and that opens the help. And again, I don't know. Oh, yes. So Zoom does show it to you. So I use this all the time. It just kind of tells you how the card works, right? And if you were to, just as an example, let's say, I don't know, let's add another. Let's add the Gmail card. I'm sorry, connector, and say, let's say, add the send email. And again, you're not sure how it works. You click the help, right? And then you can, okay, so you can read the email, read the help, and also understand, like, learn what each field does. Okay. And if you need to hide some of the fields, like you never use BCC, then you can select choose fields, and then you say, I don't want BCC, I don't want CC, like this. All right. Now to delete a card, you just click this, right? So, all right. Well, one last thing is that if you're curious what this little icon, right, this dot is, allows you to copy a card. So I can do something like this, and then I have a card, a duplicated card, and then you can close it. All right. Well, let me see if there are any questions. No questions. Well, if you have any questions, this is a good time to type them. But yeah, let me chat. If you have any questions after this event, I'm gonna put my email for everyone. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Yeah, thank you for joining today. And you'll receive a message with some resources and a link to YouTube, where we have a lot of other similar videos. Right? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.